Hi, everybody. Good morning and welcome to the 12 Days of Articles in Review. Today is day 10. Wicked excited to share with you this fascinating paper. But before I jump onto that, let me introduce myself. My name is Mary Coughlin. I'm a neonatal nurse practitioner by training and the president and founder of Caring Essentials Collaborative. Okay, on day 10, January 4th, we are going to review a paper by a team of authors that I really love and admire. I'm a big fan of the work of Jean Watson. Jean Watson is a nurse theorist, and her theory of human caring that has evolved into this unitary caring science platform or philosophical approach to nursing has always been near and dear to my heart. And so I was really thrilled when I came across this paper, particularly where it positions Watson's work and unitary caring science with resilience as a resilience model. We use Jean Watson's work in our trauma-informed professional certificate program. And I felt really cool as I read the paper, linking, the model to resilience building, because, certainly the feedback that we're getting from folks that are going through the program is I've not heard the word resilience per se, but just that sense of confidence and personal growth and empowerment that Way and Harding and Watson talk about in this paper. So let me just move forward. So this is hot off the press. It's published January. It was an EPUB in November of 2020, but it was published in January of 2021 in the International Journal of Nursing Sciences. You can see the citation over here in the chat box, and I will put it down below for those folks that will be viewing this on YouTube. So let's see. Dr. Watson is out of Greenville, North Carolina. Dr. Hardin is out of the University of Louisville School of Nursing. And Dr. Watson is a distinguished professor and dean emerita at the University of Colorado, Denver College of Nursing. So without further ado, the intention of the paper was to really take Watson's unitary caring science as a framework, and then look at the research on resilience, and then see the synergies and create some validation and support for this resilience model that the authors have created. So they kind of, do the standard, what is known and what is new. What is known is that clinicians face tremendous mental and moral distress at work, and burnout is a real issue, and actually they describe it as an epidemic. Clinicians' resilience and well-being impact patient quality and safety, right? You cannot give what you do not have. And that stress is unavoidable in life, and it is essential to learn healthy ways to cope with adversities and recover from devastations more quickly. So, of course, I immediately go to the NICU, where there's just an overwhelming amount of adversity and personal and professional devastations that we can bear witness to. And so coming up with a resilience model is just absolutely genius. So what is new, what the authors identify, is that a unitary caring science resilient model developed based on unitary caring science and research-informed psychological and neuroscience evidence is a vehicle to support and address this epidemic of burnout and provide healthy ways of coping. That the model comprises 6 resilience building strategies. And I'll dive into that when I go through the paper. These resilience building strategies pivot off of the work of Watson and her 10 Caritas processes. If you're unfamiliar with the work of Jean Watson, I absolutely urge you to Google. I have her most recent textbook. I'm looking around in I think it's up here, library. It was published, I want to say, in 2019, and it's absolutely awesome, super updated, and just brilliant. I absolutely love her work. So they kind of give you the intro, talking about the importance of resilience, and then giving you a little bit of background about Watson's caring theory. Let's see, talking about stressful situations, traumatic events, and then the clinician burnout epidemic. And of course, this was published before the COVID pandemic. So the outcomes of this paper and the guidance that can be offered from this resilience model are just like, like amazing. And I think it will really help support clinicians who are at that front line, but also create a framework for the transformation that needs to happen. Kind of throughout this entire series, I think I've been communicating this message that our current healthcare system, framework, setup, systems, processes is antiquated. It does not serve the needs of human beings in crisis. It's all about symptom and disease management, which is just a tip of the iceberg, in my opinion. So we need this kind of information and discovery, evidence-based, and marry it and integrate it with the bits of our systems that are working, that are optimal and top shelf. But there's a big gap, and I think that what Way and Hardin and Watson have pulled together is really cool. And if you're a nurse leader, I think this is a really awesome way of looking at how you can support those frontline clinicians right there on the raw edge of humanity that are experiencing burnout and even more extreme experiences of burnout, depression, and anxiety as well. So the method that the authors undertook, it was a discussion paper that introduced evidence-informed resilience building models for clinicians, and then married it with the unitary care and science framework. They then list the, they list the 10 Caritas processes. These are synopsed language that they use to talk about the Caritas processes. It's about embracing loving kindness. It's about inspiring. It's about creating trust, nurturing, forgiveness, and deepening relationships, balancing life, co-creation, ministry, and openness. And these 10 Caritas processes were the underpinning of the core strategies as they went forward to build this resilience model. They did an exhaustive lit search across the standard databases and university libraries, and the review articles that are summarized are also included in the paper. So you'll find it a very thorough and comprehensive paper. And they have a nice little graphic here that I wonder if I could make it big enough to share. Let's see, let me come over here. Sometimes I do this well, sometimes I don't do it so well. Let's see, oh here, yeah, I might be able to do this well. So let me come over to the paper then. Hang in there, guys. So you can see here that on the left part of this image, they highlight, Watson, unitary care and science, and the research-informed evidence. These are the Caritas processes: embracing loving kindness, nurturing interpersonal and intersubjectivity connections, deepening a creative use of self and sense of belonging, balancing self-learning, awareness, and evolved consciousness, valuing forgiveness and releasing negativity, and inspiring and maintaining faith and hope. And they kind of delineate these elements in their model later into the paper. And then this is the clinician resilience and well-being model that they've created. So, being kind and showing empathy. I'm just going to go quickly. Connecting with trustworthy and compassionate people, accepting through empathy and skillful self-disclosure of others, right? Recognizing each other's uniqueness, applying a cognitive reframing. That's when things are really challenging and you cognitively reframe things, looking at a situation that might be overwhelming you from a different perspective or through a different lens. Practicing gratitude and those other things that really uplift you and help you maintain that sense of faith and hope. So I thought I would just jump back to the paper. And it's open source, which is so wicked awesome. So I got mine on PubMed, where it has, it gives you free access to the papers. So what they identified when they looked at all the research and they combined everything is that the model comprised 6 resilient building strategies based off of the 10 Caritas Veritas literacy of unitary caring science and research-informed evidence. So the 6 strategies include embracing loving kindness for self and others, that's the embrace piece. Nurturing interpersonal and intersubjective connections and relationships, that's the trust and nurture piece. Deepening a creative use of self and a sense of belonging. And I really do love Watson. A lot of her work pivots off of the work of this, I think he's a French philosopher, Levinas, and he talks a lot about that sense of belonging from a spiritual, metaphysical perspective that I think you'd find really really cool and wise, one of those kinds of readings that kind of opens up your heart and your soul even. And so that deepening bit is really about deepening in ministry. So they're kind of contracting the 10 Caritas processes in this model. The fourth strategy is about balancing, and they talk about self-learning, self-awareness, and evolved self-consciousness. And I'll share a little bit more about that with you guys in the paper. Then valuing forgiveness and releasing negativity, and that's that. What did I say? That cognitive reframing strategy and that sort of thing. And then inspiring and maintaining faith and hope. So as we come down in the paper, what they've done is they've taken each of those strategies and they've kind of blown it up and given you some really great insights, some really great research that can really help you connect with the wisdom and the insight of this model and of each of its strategies. So embracing loving kindness is a fundamental Caritas process. And it talks about, really what I said earlier, you cannot give what you do not have. So if you're not nurturing and caring for yourself and loving yourself, it's near impossible to project that authentic love and kindness to others. And what we know from the research from a biological perspective, when we practice acts of kindness, right, which is an extension of our love, we actually have this, cool impact on our brain and the release of a variety of different neuroendocrine hormones such as oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. And these are the ones that they talk about here in the paper. That oxytocin is the love hormone or the bonding hormone. Let's see. So it does all those cool psychosocial things, but it also decreases inflammation, relaxes blood vessels, and improves cardiac function. Oxytocin is the antithetical hormone to cortisol. So cool, right? If you're stressed out, figure out how to, do acts of kindness for yourself and or for others, because even watching kindness being performed by another person on another person actually gives you that same experience, right? Through mirror neurons, you actually get a little squirt of oxytocin as well. Super cool stuff. It also releases dopamine, which can lift our mood and results in that helper's high that we can feel. When we get in the line, or we swaddle the baby and we calm them, or we comfort a family member who might be really devastated, we get this surge of dopamine, we get a surge of oxytocin. And we also experience the other hormone that's involved, neurohormone that's involved is serotonin, which is that emotion regulator. And it can give us a euphoria. Just as a bit of a sidebar, and I'll be talking about this in my series, talking about the transformative nursing in the NICU textbook. It's been discovered that hospitalized babies, actually have a methylation of the serotonin transporter gene as a consequence of their experience in the NICU, experience of being exposed to trauma in the NICU. And it down regulates, right? So these, it kind of helps us understand why these individuals, survivors of prematurity, have a higher propensity for anxiety and depression. It's because this alteration in this serotonin transporter gene and in insufficient amounts of serotonin, which can, lower serotonin levels, are linked to poor memory and depression. But when you do acts of kindness, you actually get a bit of a surge of serotonin. And so, for this particular strategy, what the authors are really helping us understand is, we're primed to, provide loving, kind acts, right? Nurses, physicians, therapists, that's part of our job. If we can open our hearts and open our minds, right? If we can care for ourselves, then we can do this. But sometimes we get lost in the challenge and the sorrow and the overexposure to bearing witness and the trauma that we're unable to do that. So that's part of the intention of this model, is to build that resilience so that we can, be continuously re-engaged and renourished and renewed in the work that we do in service to others. It can also help ourselves. So these random acts of kindness, like paying it forward, honoring, recognizing, the good contribution, the good work that you're doing. Other kinds of loving kindness are practicing personal wholeness, taking care of yourself, exercising, balanced diet, getting enough sleep, these kinds of things. So it's on both sides of the fence, and that cultivates resilience. The second strategy that they discuss here in the paper is this idea of nurturing interpersonal and intersubjective connections and relationships. That really, we are a social species, and they really talk about how we need to lean into that. We really need to embrace that, and it can feel uncomfortable and awkward and not what we're used to. But when we lean in, we help others and we help ourselves as well. And in fact, leaning in can actually reduce our stress and the stress of the other person that we're nurturing or supporting or in relationship with. Even though when you're leaning in, you might be having a spike of cortisol, right? You might be jacked up and a little bit stressed out. Once you connect, you release that. And so they talk about that, which I think is just so wicked cool. There's a deepening a creative use of self and a sense of belonging. I mentioned that is really one of those founding principles from the Watson's Caring Science, based on the work of Levinas. But they talk about also, right, if you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, belonging is on that pyramid. That sense of belonging is considered a fundamental human need, just like food and shelter. So, embracing this and figuring out how can we creatively use that. When I had my brief experience in the mental health world, my colleagues, my mentors, if you will, were talking about the therapeutic use of self, which was kind of foreign to me. I felt safe and confident with my lab coat on and all my stuff in my pockets. But my mentor said, take that jacket off. You can't go in there like that. You'll frighten these children. You have to go in there as a regular human being, right? Vulnerable, and use yourself as a vehicle for compassion and which ultimately becomes therapeutic for these children. So deepening creative ways of connecting with others and creating that sense of belonging for others and of course for self as well. The third strategy is about balancing self-learning, self-awareness, and an evolved consciousness, which again, they kind of talk like from the philosophical perspective or the pragmatic perspective, and then they get into a little bit of the science, talking about how the effects of chronic stress can really derail our functional capacity. But when we understand that, right, when we become self-aware and we become aware of, I think I'm actually having a stress response, when we can become that attuned, then it opens up the door for us to then take action, right? And, you might not be awesome at balancing this, right, coming out of the gate, but the first step is noticing. So that's the invitation here, is to really reconnect with who are you? What where's your stand on these different values, on these different experiences, on these different phenomena associated with the human experience, right? We actually do a lot of that with the Trauma-Informed Professional Certificate Program. A big chunk of the online content is providing some empirical information, multimodal empirical, and then asking the learner to really reflect on what is their connection with this. And it's really about, kind of unbundling yourself and connecting with that deeper sense of identity. And that helps build resilience, right? Because you uncover the power that you are, right? You uncover your light, if you will. And so they talk about how healthcare clinicians can promote this balance through a variety of different strategies, right? Recognizing each of us as a unique human being, appreciating each other's, creating boundaries for ourselves, right? What's okay and what's not okay. Authentically listening to others, finding opportunities to practice self-care. So it's really, the paper's a brilliant combination of the existential, ontological, and the pragmatic and the practical. And then the fourth, I'm sorry, am I off? I am off. The fifth strategy is about valuing forgiveness and releasing negativity. That really forgiveness is a deliberate decision to let go of resentment. And when you look at the research around forgiveness, people that are unable to forgive are actually more prone to illness and chronic disease. And they've done several studies around this. And actually, there's been one intervention study helping people release and moved to forgiveness, and their health actually improved. So there's great research around this. So just imagine yourself, right? What are you toting around, and how it literally weighs you down, physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It weighs you down. So figuring out how to do that, and that takes self-reflection. That's a journey in. And they talk about some of the cool brain anatomy that's involved in this, so that you can really kind of make those connections and figure out strategies that are sustainable, repeatable, and sustainable. And then the sixth and final strategy in this really cool model is talking about inspiring and maintaining faith and hope. And this is our capacity to to believe, right? And that helps us get through difficult times. One of my colleagues is really all about hope, right? And faith. And we know that, there's textbooks written about hope, the impact of hope and faith, and the biology behind it, and the psychology behind it, and how it really can help us. And so, learning strategies that can help cultivate that includes like practicing gratitude, again, taking care of yourself, being open to the possibilities of spirituality, which is different than religiosity, right? It's an internal, personal relationship that you can cultivate with yourself and with whatever divine aspect or source that you connect with, that aligns with you, that really helps you maintain that sense of authentic optimism, right? To get through and navigate this world of human suffering that we are immersed in as healthcare providers. So I think you're going to really love this paper. They do a nice little discussion to kind of summarize the research and the impact of the unitary care and science model. I think it's an absolute must-read paper. And every paper for me is timely, but certainly now, wrapping up year 2 of this global pandemic, I think this paper has some really cool strategies that you'll find super helpful. So I hope you enjoyed today's session. I hope you download the paper and